Terre Haute Customs how-to video episode 2. Um, so it seems everybody wanted to know how we do our New Holland 900 chopper. So it's a little bit more involved than the cast and forage wagon. Probably, I imagine it's going to take a couple of episodes, but it's nothing really difficult. It's just time consuming. And the first things first, always you're going to tear down your piece. One of my favorite things to do is tear them apart carefully. Move your head, remove your spout. With the wheels, I use a pair of nippers and carefully take them off. This is not easy. If you use it a little too hard, you will take off the spindle. But pulling has just never been a fan of mine. Especially the older ones. The older ones were really, they had that round bubble on the inside of the tire that made it very difficult to get the wheel off. The newer ones are a bit easier, but take your wheel off, take your head off, take the spout off. You're going to want to remove the stickers, take a razor blade, or however you feel free to do it. You could use your fingernail for all I care. It doesn't really matter. Just get them out of the way. They're no good to us now. We are going to really mess this chopper up. So, pretty much first things first, right off the bat, once you get it tore down, we're going to cut off the hitch. Cut directly in front of the main tin, I guess, right where the hitch meets. Probably closer to the hitch side, so you leave a little bit of meat because we're going to need this to build a hinge. That's the first spot right there. Again, essential when grinding. Please use your safety glass. Alright, so once you get your hitch cut off, nice and flat, we're going to need that surface. We're going to be cutting into it horizontally to provide the space for the hinge. But before we do that, we're going to put a 1/16 hole vertically to allow for the hinge pin through that. I mean, I use a drill press. If you're good with a drill, you can do it by hand, but it needs to be pretty level, pretty straight, because if it's off, it's going to mess up the swing, you know, either left or right, up or down. You'll have your hitch angled, and that'll be no fun for everybody. That'd be terrible. So, if you've got access to a drill press, I recommend it. Okay, so once you get your hole drilled, your 1/16 hole, top to bottom, you are going to need 1/16 rod in order to put in the hole. Hopefully it's going to be a nice tight fit. Once we get the hole drilled, we're going to need to cut in the hinge points into the front of the unit. Again, take your Dremel, make sure you're wearing your safety goggles. Takes a pretty steady hand. You're going to want to cut straight into it. It's going to need to be about a 1/16 of an inch wide, maybe just a hair less. I don't know. We've got a couple of hitches built here, and both of those are about the same width, top and bottom, and that's what it needs to fit into. It doesn't really matter ahead of time if it's exactly this far apart, because you can add styrene between the two pieces in order to make the hitch a little taller or smaller if you need to. Again, that's where measuring comes into it, but when using a Dremel tool, measuring, it technically depends on how good you are with a Dremel tool. So for me, it's easier to just fix the height after. I don't know if it matters. Personally, I prefer the reinforced cutting discs that Dremel offers. They seem to last longer, and they don't crack up and fly off into your face while you're using them. You're going to want to cut in basically just as far behind the hole as you are in front of it to allow for a little swing behind with the hitch itself. I mean, if you just go to the hole, you're not going to have enough room. So you gotta put a pretty big smile in it. And we're gonna obviously enlarge that so that the hitch can fit in there. We're gonna probably go a little bit closer to the bottom. We have a few done here. You know, you don't really need a lot of space towards the bottom. You just need enough to hold it. So obviously don't make it so thin that it, you know, folds down when you touch it, but it doesn't need to be very thick either. So enlarge your 2 holes, use your Dremel, get it about that size. I'm going to fast forward here. Next thing we use to build the hitch is a small piece of brass. I haven't found brass the thickness that I wanted and the width. So what I do is I find the width that I want and I double it up, which personally I just do using a little bit of super glue. We glue it together. Again, we're going to fast forward. Get it together, put a 1/16 hole at either end. One end you're going to put a little tiny piece of rod in to make your hitch. Much like Ertl's, that way it hooks up to every single tractor Ertl made, other than the Authentics, which thanks a lot, Ertl. What can you do? They look good on a shelf, though. Get your brass cut to the right length that you want it put together. New Holland made a couple of different lengths for the hitch. I'm sticking with basically the same length Ertl's using, maybe just a hair longer to add in so I can add PTO and whatnot. But I have one started that hopefully we're going to build a snapper head for the unit, and because it's going to have a snapper head, it needed to be a bit longer. For the PTO housing, we're using a square tube of brass. It is 1/8 of an inch square. I don't think thickness really matters. You want it thick enough so you can't bend it real easy, because otherwise it's going to look terrible the first time you touch it. The styrene in the middle, in between the tongue and the PTO, it's kind of cut to fit. We're using a piece that's basically a 1/16 square. I don't even know what the hell that'd be called. It's not a rod, square rod, whatever. But any piece you use, just so long that it keeps the hitch and the PTO uniformly separated front to back. That's all you're trying to do. Next thing we're going to work on is the top PTO tube is going to need something to hinge to. There might be a better way or an easier way to do this, something, you know, more useful, more handy. What I've used so far is a piece of styrene, cut to fit, drill a hole in it ahead of time, because drilling a hole in styrene when it's the size of a fingernail clipping is not real convenient. Cut it down the size you're going to need, which isn't going to be very big. It's going to be about 1/8 of an inch wide with a 1/16 hole in it, and then we're going to also need to cut it to fit into the tube, and then, you know, glue it in order to keep it steady there. You can either use if you're good with a razor blade, you can use that, or a Dremel tool, but you want it so it'll fit snugly into the tube you're using. That's what we're going to do now. This might actually be the hardest part. What we're doing here is trying to make a piece cut to fit. You're going to want to round off the corners so that your hitch can turn once this is applied into the hitch. You know, once it's installed, you're going to want to be able to swing the hitch just a little bit. Rounding off the corners will help you do that. I really can't tell you how much. You're going to want this kind of a shape to it, although I'm a little more right than left as that looks at it, but that'll allow me to line it up to the hitch, because I'm not doing anything perfect, because drilling into these things is difficult to be uniform. So we're basically we're gonna match the imperfect piece of styrene to the imperfect cut to the imperfect hole. And in the end of the day, it'll all work out and it'll look pretty goddamn good, hopefully. So get your piece cut, then we're going to apply it into the PTO housing. You're going to want a small piece of styrene on top of it to help it fit in the hole snugly. You could just use super glue, it just would leave a little bit of a gap. when it's installed. But we kind of try to make it look as best as we can, considering how. God, I hope people don't get upset. I think Kyle is the only person that we've actually delivered so far on this toy, and he said he liked it. So we'll have to see when the rest of these are all sold to customers, and we've actually got about 4 more orders. So maybe after this, a few will get canceled. We'll see. Next step, I think, after you get your styrene hinge part built, is to install it along with the lower drawbar. Like I said, the lower drawbar is 2 pieces of brass I glue together because they're the right size for what I'm looking for. So I didn't get into that too much. Hopefully you're not too offended. Take your PTO housing, slide it onto your hitch piece. That'll let you know how close to the chopper you can glue it. You're not going to glue too quick. You're going to want to get the fit right before you do it. I mean, how close it is to the chopper is going to determine how far the drawbar swings. That's what's stopping it right there, is the PTO housing hitting the front of the chopper. If we did it right. Then we're going to glue that into the PTO housing, and we're going to glue the PTO housing to the drawbar and the drawbar to the PTO housing. Oh, fun little things to do. Either before or after, it's up to you. We're going to drill I think it's a 1/32 hole towards the front of the PTO housing in order to put in our hose caddy. If you prefer to have a hose caddy. If you don't want one, don't worry about it. It's an unnecessary step, but I like them. I think they look good. They add a little measure of realism because we add the PTO and the hoses to the model. The hose caddy kind of comes in handy. So get it situated where you want it, and then you can mark it. Easiest way to do it is to mark the PTO housing on the hitch where you're going to glue it to the hitch, glue it to the hinge piece, and then you can add a little tiny piece of styrene into the PTO housing if you so desire. So that's our next step. All right, so we cut our chopper down. We built a hinge out of styrene and brass. We've glued it on, glued the PTO housing to the hitch. Used a little piece of styrene in between the hitch and the PTO housing to add realism. Now we've glued it all into place, and we've added our hinge pin, whatever you want to look at. I also put the hitch in the front, so that's how I use it. Until somebody asks for something different, that's what we'll do. The next thing we're going to do is grind off the top and the bottom of the hinge pin flush with the chopper, but you really can't see it once we paint. That's our next goal. You're going to want to add a tiny little dot of super glue, probably to the top, so that it can't get anywhere near the hinge, because if it super glues the hinge, obviously we got a real problem. But we don't want the pin falling out. This one's pretty solid, so it probably won't anyway, but I don't like going with probably won't. We're going to go with definitely won't. At least not until super glue fails. So that's our next goal, is to grind down the hitch top and bottom. We're going to grind that off too, make that flush, and then we'll go to our next step after that. Alright, I'm going to pretty much finish up for today. The last step we're going to show you, we did the 1/32 hole in the PTO housing. That's where we're going to put the hose caddy. We use floral wire, which works well. I believe it's 1/32. I don't know. It fits in the hole real well. So that's what we're going to stick with. Going to want to bend it into a hoop, I guess. I don't know. That shape, basically. Get it figured out about where you want it. Like I said, a hoop at the end is how I do it. And then take your needle nose, bend it over, and we've got the start of a hose caddy, like this one here. Then we'll put a 90-degree angle at both sides of the bottom, add it into the hitch. It's going to look a little bit better than that, but that's about the basic idea of it. And like you say, you can see that one as far as what it's going to look like when we're done. You put a little glue in it, put the 90-degree in there. You'll want 290 degrees kind of holding it together. Give the angle you want, and that's about it for the hitch. You know, that's how we started it. Next episode we'll try to do the crop processor and PTO hoses. Maybe the jack stand. Our jack stand is a pain in the ass. It's 5 or 6 steps just to build the silly thing, but it comes out looking pretty good. So that's it for today. Thank you for watching. Again, we love answering questions. I don't know if we love it, but we like doing it. I guess it works. So feel free to ask any questions you got, and we'll talk to you next time.